we're back with Mark Dalgety. Mark, I just want to go to the chat room for a second before I ask you the next question. Garfield, greetings from UK, said, "Good evening, Cello and Dalo. It is first time tuning in, expecting a good conversation." And greetings from UK, said, "Oh, it's Garfield Buddy." Thank you, Garfield. Alison Butters Grant said, "Hello, Mark and Selwyn. First time on the show. Great story, Mark. Keep on trudging." Garfield Buddy, "Mark, your brand is established in the UK to a degree. Do you currently sell in the Caribbean? And if not, do you intend to?" Alison Butters Grant, "Hello, Selwyn. Great show." Patrick, "Good evening, Selwyn and Mark." Can we take Garfield's question? Do you currently sell in the Caribbean? And if not, do you intend to?
Yeah, we do sell in the Caribbean. But it's what you call an unstructured distribution channel we deal with. We're still trying to iron out a deal with the distributor for Trinidad and Barbados. So what's been happening is that you could, from time to time, find our products in Trinidad, Barbados, sometimes Antigua and so forth. But it's in a very haphazard manner. Sometimes it's wholesalers because of the extensive distribution network we have in the UK. We have a lot of big distributors and wholesalers that also have smaller wholesalers that come and buy from them. And then they would put a consolidated container or pallet and bring it into these parts of the world, which would include our teas. I mean, sometimes people say to me that you see our teas in places like even Angola, and obviously we've actually never sold to Angola directly, but then, someone who might be imported from Angola would have bought our teas via one of our distribution networks. But in the Caribbean, we are now, as we begin to set up a production facility, we are now trying to build some more sturdy, serious relationship directly with distributors, not just in the Caribbean, but we now have our packaging with multilingual in terms of like Suriname, Dutch writing. We have Portuguese for the Brazilian market, Spanish for the Venezuelan market, and we've got things like Arabic, which is looking into the Middle East, and the French also. Yep.
In that same vein, Patrick asked, "What about the USA? Any plans?"
USA, I always make a sign for that one. We do sell to the US. We've lost a lot of money in the US from time to time. The scenario there, we're still looking strongly, trying to find a strong distributor to take and be a bit passionate in pushing our products. So we've had distributors before who started off okay-ish, I wouldn't say well, and then we've ended up either not getting paid, struggling to get paid, and we've got annoyed and we didn't want to do any work with America any longer. And that is exactly how it goes. Sometimes you meet some great people who talk a lot in America, saying that they could do this and do that. Even sometimes friends who have got strategic relationships in big companies, and they say they could link you there and link you there. You don't really get that much delivery on it, to tell the truth. I mean, it's almost embarrassing to the fact that sometimes an American comes to a factory in the UK and they say they're going to do all these things. My major staff begin to look and smile because they say a lot of them always tend to come and speak a lot and they never seem to be delivering. Unfortunately, that is our experience with America up to now.
What is the Dalgety brand, and where do you see it in 5 years?
Well, our ambition is obviously to build a global brand. So, we are attacking 3 points. You're looking at the European markets. We're passionate about getting into the West African market, where, Nigeria, Ghana. We do sell, even right now, into the Middle East, into Oman and Qatar and Saudi Arabia. Back in the Caribbean, definitely. US, we're looking at it. Right now my focus, for years we've always been working on these export markets. Export markets in different jurisdictions is always very difficult to secure. It's normally a long haul, so it's a consistent working, hoping one day that you'll find that perfect storm that is going to really take it to the next level. But you just continue working on it all the time in different ways,
I'm curious, Mark. You took this $1,000 and you turned it into 8,000 pounds, and turned it into 8,000 pounds, an amazing profit margin. Did you meet anyone along the way, before then or between then and now, that have sort of loaned you some support, influenced you in some way, give you some guidance, or someone who is in the business that you might have learned some things from?
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, you meet people, many people you meet all the time. The thing about it is that you learn a little bit from everyone. I
Hmm.
don't think there's any one specific person that would have taught you every single thing. So what happens is that, I mean, as you moving through in your travels, you meet all kinds of various interesting people. And then with some people, you talk many things, millions of things. And then sometimes they say one thing that it's only you harness it and realize that one is a good point. And you take that one out of that relationship or that conversation. And then you end up having your own journey. And you would basically take a little bit from everyone that you would have met. And that puts your personal concept into position for the things that you're trying to do.
Relationships, very important.
Yes.
Tell us about your management style, your staff, and how the convergence of the two realizes such success for Dalgety Teas.
Well, my management style, I mean, I'm now trying to harness my management style. I think I was have a pretty laid back management style to the extent that it almost lost me in the business a few years ago. I mean, in the way I employed people and so forth. I mean, I basically, just employ. I mean, well, I had a bad employment policy when I started. I mean, I would just employ people based on people saying that they could do things. So I'll just employ them and then hope. And once they started working, even if they're doing, silly things, you almost tend to not want to sack them because, you kind of like feel a bit bad about it. um, I mean, my staff have always been, pretty easygoing kind of people, but they work hard because they see me working hard. But then there's people might come along and try to take advantage of the situation. I
Yeah.
mean, but then what happens also as your business grow, you have to get more serious about the way you structure your management style. And I think within the last, I mean, we're now in business almost 18 to 20 years. I think it's only within the last 5 years I began to take management structures in a more serious and formal way where I'm looking at, KPIs and I mean, I mean, from time to time also before then, sometimes when I don't understand something very well, I've always brought in consultants to work with me
Hmm.
for 6 months or a year at a time based on the challenge I might have. Yep. Um, Sometimes that's the way you get right people around you to focus in on what you're trying to do. But I mean, I think my management style has been it's gotten more serious in terms of keeping things formal in a serious manner because of where we're trying to get to. Because it's only so long you could go around with a casual, easygoing behavior and have people doing what they feel like doing. So it's now more formal, but before it was very casual in terms of just employing people and they get along with their work and you try to make sure you teach them, you send them on courses and let them get along with what they do. Once they produce in teas, then we're just happy. And once they're happy to work, better they have a job to do and they're happy to work the 9, 10, 12 in the night, work on Saturday, Sunday, and, we put on the music in the factory and we keep working.
Mark, you work hard, you work long, and you work diligently. But how do you balance your business with time for family, friends, and leisure? And what do you do for fun? I know it's a lot in one question.
Well, I mean, the first thing you got to do is make work fun.
Hmm.
And I once you make work fun, then you don't really think that you're actually working all the time. I mean, we are involved even like, I mean, I'm into a lot into soca music and carnival. So, I mean, because I'm into that, I end up sponsoring mass bands that not in the carnival. I invite all my friends to come, they put on a Dalgety t-shirt, we drink rum, and we even go to carnivals in Germany, in Berlin, and all these places. But then at the same time, I would probably be promoting my tea. I would
Right.
probably be, I mean, like, especially in the UK, for instance, like last year, we probably sponsored like 7 bands. But we'll make sure that, for instance, everyone that is wearing a costume of the band at the morning, when they're doing their breakfast, they drink Dalgety teas. When they get back from the road, they drink Dalgety teas. So I balance all of that. I mean, try to get my kids involved in it. We're ready to go play carnival on the kids' day. I mean, in terms of my other recreation would be, I mean, I like the cinema actually. So, I mean, in terms of like going out, I mean, with my wife or so, that I find very relaxing.
Hmm.
I wouldn't have time to look at TV that much, but I tend to try and go to the cinema. I mean, I think I've always done that even since I was studying anyhow. But I mean, to me, it's really turning work a lot into pay. So even whilst I'm playing, I'm forever looking at opportunities in the play zone where we could promote our brand. And in that way, you don't make it doesn't come across as though you're actually working hard all the time.
Garfield Buddy said, "We will eventually get to the stage where the Dalgety brand will be global." And
But
you want to say something?
no. But that's our ultimate ambition. You know, I
Yes.
mean, we want to be the Twinings or the. I mean, I don't know if to use the word black Twinings or the Unilevers with the Liptons or so forth. Because I mean, you know, we've competed with these big brands that have been around for 100 and something years, and we've beaten them at least in our environment and our targeted zone. So I mean, when you know you've managed to beat those guys in I mean, is a lot of what you call I use the word guerrilla marketing. You know, because I mean, you can't really come up against big brands like a Lipton or a Twinings by trying to fight with them face on.
Right.
So you use guerrilla marketing tactics. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Where you chop out a section of a jurisdiction, a community, a society, and you say, well, okay, I'm going to try to be number one in that sector, and you strategically try and focus in on that. Now these big guys, because they're looking more on a global or a big in the big fish, I would say. You get a chance to carve yourself out, and that's how you strategically try to build a brand. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight anyhow.
So Mark, talking about competition, what is different in the way you look at your competition today versus when you first started?
I mean, the thing with competition, you always have to you first of all you have to admire them, respect them, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then what we always do, I mean, one of the things I do in any country I arrive in, I mean, sometimes before I even hit the hotel, I just go into the supermarket and see what tea is selling, and I would sometimes even just buy packets and I drink it and just see what's going on, you know. Then I would begin to look and see what they might be offering that a consumer might not necessarily want. And from there is when you conceptualize what we could offer. Because I mean, to have a product that is successful, whether it's a live product you're selling or a service you're selling, is that you got to have what you call a USP, which is a unique selling point. So that's basically where it starts. I mean, and I mean, if you're going to go around shouting and thinking that you're the best without seeing what the competition is doing, then you're pretty much shooting yourself in the foot, you know. Because I mean, you can't say you're the best or you're better if you're not knowing what they're doing.
So what was it like getting your teas onto the shelves, the supermarkets and so on? What was that experience like?
I mean, that is basically hard work and determination. I mean, you know, I use a term, we use what you call the route of least resistance to start with. Now, I mean, we didn't get into the biggest supermarkets automatically. We had to prove that the product was selling properly. And I mean, I say the route of least resistance because you begin to attack the market that you don't have to explain too much or educate too much. Once they see what you're selling is presented properly. Like, I mean, our first product was Corilla Bush or marketed as Cersei tea. Now, I mean, most West Indians knew, or at least the Jamaicans to start off with, knew what Cersei was. So, I mean, once it's presented in a proper way, you go to the shops where you know that particular consumer group will go to. So we would have targeted all the independent ethnic grocers, first of all in London, then we would have moved into the north of London. But anywhere, I mean, I used to just go into the library and I would just go into and look at a consensus book, for instance, in the UK, and I would map out and I would show you where all the high ethnic areas in the UK was. And then I would simply just go into the yellow pages of those areas and photocopy all the grocery shops and health food shops there was in that area and literally go to each one of them and try to sell my product. But that's what you call using basic common sense, using the route of least resistance, and attack the market from the lowest end, and build up from there. Once you begin to show success there, you find that the biggest supermarkets will begin to look and think, that's an interesting product. How come it's not in our store, but it's in thousands of little shops here, there, and everywhere? Because they want to be part of the action. They don't want to feel that they're missing out on something that all the other shops have got listed. But I mean, that's the concept and the strategy that we use in
Mark,
getting ourselves into the big supermarkets.
Mark, I'm enthralled by what I'm hearing here. Give us a glimpse of one of your no's when someone told you no and how you dealt with that or how you deal with that.
The nose.
Yes, the no's.
A no, so no. I know. How do I deal with a no? You could always say no funny enough. I mean, I'm trying to work out how I've ever gone wrong. I mean, you always start by smiling at least.
Right.
You know what I mean? You start by at least smiling, you know what I mean? If somebody says no and you get aggressive, it creates a bigger no. See what I'm saying? So you start by at least smiling, you know what I mean? And sometimes you might even agree that the no is no, but then you begin to say to them, it's no, but really yes.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying? Because I mean, once you start smiling and you say to them you agree with them, but there's this little part that you don't agree with them about, and you give them the benefit that to some extent what the no that they're talking about is true, but there's this little part that they didn't realize is a yes. You then begin to convert it into a yes by the end of the conversation. And I think that's the way you go around doing it. That's the art of negotiating.
So, Mark, for those who might have refused the tea in the first place, right, and taken them later, I want to assume, I shouldn't, but I want to assume that you've had those situations where some group or chain or store refused the tea and then take them later. And so, if that happened, what do you think was responsible for the change?
Well, sometimes it's strategies. I'll give you a little example. One of my first situations that really bombarded me. The first time I attacked Birmingham, right, came out to London. I went to Birmingham city centre to try and start selling the teas. We had they had all these shops I was targeting, and I went into a shop which I thought was guaranteed. It was called Afro Caribbean Grocers, and there was a black proprietor behind it, you know. And went in there and displayed the teas, and he looked very funny, and he said, "Oh, you come from London, and this tea couldn't sell." And then the guy bought out the Twinings and a German brand called Pompadour Peppermint, and he said, "This is what you call proper tea." I mean, then he even went and he got his kettle and he brewed it, he made a cup of my tea, and then whenever he sipped the Twinings and the Pompadour tea, he smiled, and every time he sipped the Dalgety when he made up his face, And even, for instance, when a customer or two came in and he asked them to try the teas, and every time he handed them the cup with the Dalgety one, he had his face made up as if it's the worst thing since sliced bread, And so he was like, "No way this is ever going to sell." Now, what transpired, I slowly began to sell to all the other shops that were actually Indian-owned. He was the only black-owned shop in that area. And I started selling to all these little shops because what I realized also began to happen. You see, unfortunately, you find that in the consumer market, you find, well, I always used to say black consumer market. We are always the consumers and rarely the ones that are selling.
Mm-hmm.
But what happens is that a lot of my customers are normally from Indian subcontinent and everywhere else in the Caribbean. But sometimes you could use even your accent to get an order. Because sometimes these guys don't know, they know that most of their consumers are West Indians. But they don't always know exactly what the West Indians want. So if a West Indian comes in and say this is what they really want, most of the time they will at least try, even if they spend £10 just to see what's going to happen. But I can remember in this particular instance when this guy had actually said no, I continued. I mean, every time I went to Birmingham, I went to this shop and I actually started buying even a drink or something like that there. I would just say good morning and I would leave and I'd go to the shop next door and deliver my teas. And I never asked him, to buy it afterwards. Until about 6 months later, he continued seeing me going to all the other shop delivering, but I always went to his shop and bought the drink or so. And then one day he said, "By the way, do you have any more of that tea you bought for me?" You think? And that's how I got into the shop. But I mean, the guy was so bitter against the tea. I mean, I couldn't fight against him right away. So I just used a mild way of getting him to buy it. You see what I'm saying? But sometimes that's how you would actually even deal with the no. But I can remember the guy had battered me so much. I could remember sitting down outside of that shop for about at least 4 to 5 minutes thinking I had gone into the wrong business. Because I was so convinced that he was the one man that was going to buy the tea for me in Birmingham. Because the risk I had actually taken, I think, was my first trip to Birmingham. And I mean, when it's such a way. Sometimes you take risks, like for instance, I sold out in London. I wasn't getting any much order because I'd already saturated that market.
Uh-huh.
I loaded my car with petrol, right, and headed up to Birmingham literally with not enough money to get back to London if the fuel had finished. So I knew I had to sell, what I'm saying, enough to even at least put petrol back in the vehicle to get back into London. And this one shop was the shop that I felt at least I was going to make my petrol money. When I saw the black guy behind the counter, and then he battered me so much that I really thought I was in the wrong business. you know.
Let me just go to the chat room for a second. Patrick said that's right, Dalo. I can't remember what he said that to. Again, what was the light bulb moment that made you think this was a viable business idea?
Um, you know what? I mean, I don't think it was ever a light bulb business because I mean a light bulb moment. I mean, the thing about how I think is that once I have an idea and I would have looked at all the various scenarios of the no's and yes and the probabilities and so forth. I mean, most businesses could always look as though it's never going to work. And I mean, once you got a passion and a belief that you feel is going to work, you normally make it work. Because in any one day, I could guarantee you there's tea companies that are failing right now and ones that are succeeding. You just got to make sure you're on the side that is succeeding. And that's the way I think.
One quick question before we go on a break. Well, Patrick just said, Garfield said that's harsh. Patrick said, damn, Dalo, that was courageous. You mentioned this black guy who you thought at least would guarantee you some sales, and he disappointed you. So I ask you this question: what does it mean to be a successful black businessman in the UK?
The three words I always use is that you gotta be determined, you gotta be focused.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. I'm prepared to work hard, you know. But determination and focus is very important. And I mean, you also got to make sure that any product that you got is definitely got a unique selling point. Because if you're doing exactly what everybody else is doing, you know, then you might be okay-ish. But I mean, it's important to have a unique selling point in the product you say. But I mean, determination and focus is very important. Because when all the rain and the stones and the snows and whatever it is keeps coming in, that determination and focus is what keeps you in line. Because you have an ultimatum that you want to achieve.
Gotcha. Let's take a break. We are back with Mark Dalgety. So, Mark, the question I have for you: what have you learned about the herbs that you use in your teas that might surprise those of us who grew up in Guyana and the Caribbean?
I'll tell you what. Most of the herbs that we use, they've got literally hundreds of different benefits. My passion within what we do is not so much the what the herbs are used for. My passion is more to do with the technology of taking the herbs from the basic stage and taking them to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, what was really ironic, especially in the early days when we first started, people used to come to me and like, oh, my belly is hurting, back and this, and my foot is swollen. What do I need? I actually didn't really know what to tell them because they thought I was some sort of heavy herbalist, But I mean, we're not herbalists as such. What we're into is really looking at commodities that we could repackage and take to the next level. And then afterwards, I mean, once we realize, okay, like for instance, I'll give you an example. Like, okay, Ceracity is a good tea in terms of like, did a lot of reading up on that one there because I mean, it is good for diabetes, it's good for blood pressure, arthritis, cancer, and various ailments, cleansing the blood and revitalizing the body and so forth, Mm-hmm. So sometimes we do some mild research on some of them, but then also, I mean, we do a lot of ginger flavored teas. So, I mean, we knew the ginger's got various medicinal benefits associated with it. Yeah. But many a times we don't always get deep. I mean, although we plan to, depend on what we're trying to do with it. I mean, like, for instance, we've got our eyes on the nutraceutical industry, which is basically the same herbs that we're doing, but offering it in terms of tablets. Now, on that basis now, I mean, and that's probably another 6-7 years down the line, we are slowly now just reading up and understanding a bit more about it, But I mean, especially in the early days, I mean, we were just trying to make sure. I mean, like our lemon and ginger, everybody knows what lemon is, everybody knows what ginger is. I mean, Twiners was making a lemon and ginger that was very weak, more lemony than gingery. We realized that the market wanted the lemon and ginger was more gingery and stronger. So that's how we hit the market with a product like that.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not always necessary from a concept whereby we're saying, well, you need to drink lemon and ginger because if you drink it, you're going to live another 20 years or something like that.
It feels almost unfair to ask you this question. What do you believe is the formula for success? Because you've spoke so eloquently about the 3 points: determination, focus, and working hard. But can you give it a little twist, another twist on what do you think the formula is for Dalgety Tea's success?
The formula right now is to make sure that you're not working for money and the money's working for you.
Ah, that I like that. So how do you promote teas, Dalgety Teas?
Well, I mean, what I think on the long term, as any business person needs to do, is begin to model your business whereby you don't necessarily have to be there with a sledgehammer hammering away all the time at the business.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if you want to end up being extremely successful, you got to continually begin to model your business in such a way that the business doesn't even need you to be there, but is working without you. And that is the ultimate successful situation to get yourself into.
What
Better you get up and work, you want to lie down and sleep all day or go to the beach or go with your wife on a holiday, it doesn't really matter because the business is working and money is coming in.
markets, Mark? What markets are you currently aiming for at this moment, and what is your dream market?
My dream market is West Africa.
West Africa.
Yes, Africa in general, the whole of Africa. Because that's the most undeveloped market and is the fastest growing region in the world right now.
That's true.
And the competition is also when you try to penetrate certain well-developed markets like the European and the North American markets. So we find our market extremely a market that at this stage that we should start trying to penetrate. We're talking about like Nigeria with 100 and I think it's almost 200 million people. You just need about 1% of them to be buying one packet a day every month. You're talking about stealing money. And when we go into that market, like when I go to Nigeria, what was ironic, one of the biggest brands you saw was Lipton tea, which is the one I displaced in every ethnic market in the UK. So it's markets like that. You find that the adverse markets are the ones that that is the one one of the things I find is that when you have an entrepreneurial mind, you always seem as though you're paddling up the stream and everybody's paddling down. But that is what makes the success, because what happens, people don't realize the difference of what's going on in certain areas because they're waiting until everybody's reached to where everything has happened already. Mm-hmm. And when everything has happened already, then there's no gains to make there.
As an experienced businessman, successful at that, how much would you say luck plays a role in your success? Is it ever a consideration?
I think yes, it's good to have luck, but sometimes you actually have to make your luck.
Uh-huh.
I don't think you sit down there thinking there's going to be a lucky. Even sometimes when I think sometimes something has been lucky, when a week or two later when I revisit the situation, I realize the luck was created due to perseverance over a period of time. Like for instance, you might be, things that happen sometimes, like you could be in an area you're forever trying to get a particular client to buy something or some potential shop that you're targeting, for instance, yeah. You could be trying for a year, 2 years, and then what ends up happening, one day you go into the area and you think to yourself, and you're not actually, everybody's stocked, you're not getting any orders. And then you go back to that guy again and you said, look, it's time you start, have you considered whether you should take this product or so forth? I was thinking about it. Yes, I'm going to take a pallet now. This stuff could sell.
Gotcha.
And suddenly the guy spent $1,000 or whatever, $2,000 with you. And this is the guy that didn't want to buy from you for a year or 2 years, but you had actually hit on his door 20 times before. And that same day you went into the area, no one else that normally buys from you didn't want anything else. But the one guy that has never wanted to purchase from you suddenly decided that on that day he's going to buy from you. Now, you think yourself, damn, that is lucky, right? But The guy didn't buy from you because he's only now it's because you've been hitting on his door all the time. So, I mean, you could say it's lucky that you actually got that order on that day when you didn't get any other orders. But then it's lucky in one way. But at the same time, you actually created the luck because you were actually hitting on the door a long time before that.
I see. I want to touch on a little sensitive topic. Maybe not for you, but sensitive because of its nature. You're a successful man, businessman, who happens to be black. I want to put it that way. In the UK, how have you dealt with, or do you deal with racism if it shows itself?
Well, there's definitely racism. I think how I've dealt with it is you always got to be smart. You it's all about turning a negative into positive and understanding what is the true outcome that you want from a scenario, even if you realize the person is racist. You see? Because, I mean, many of my clients sometimes are actually racist as far as I'm concerned. But I've created a situation whereby they realize that if they don't buy our Dalgety teas, then they're going to be losing out. So they'll be smiling with me, and I've had situations where a guy might not even want to purchase from me, but then what I ended up doing is finding somebody he likes to purchase from, and I sell to that person to sell to him. You see what I'm saying?
Strategy.
I mean, it's the kind of things we do. You see what I'm saying? You know? I mean, we've had situations where, like, if I realize there's certain areas, like in London, that we've had certain Indian guys might not want to buy it, then I got an Indian sales rep to go and sell to him. And I mean, when the Chinese never wanted to buy from us in the Chinese supermarket, I convinced my distributors who had a Chinese arm to list it into their Chinese division and got the Chinese to buy via that route. Until when the Chinese realized it was selling, then they started calling our factory directly, and I thought they were making a mistake. So you have to act smart, you know. I mean, you don't even get annoyed, you know. The fact that you even realize a guy is racist is actually giving you the advantage to understand how to deal with him.
I wouldn't
you don't
even.
deal with him by being confrontational.
I would
Deal
not.
with him by being smart, because the ultimatum is what you try to achieve by working with him.
Mark, I wouldn't even ask you a question I had in mind before we talk. You explain this. What makes you a successful businessman? That is very obvious. If you can remember, what was it? What was it like when you got your first major order? What was that feeling like?
I don't know. I can't even remember when I had my first major order.
Okay.
I mean, I think most of my orders are crippled. I mean, I don't think I've ever had a major order at one time. What has basically happened is that, I mean, it's relationships that are built up into bigger orders. So it's never been a situation whereby, I mean, you know, that's why you say you got to be, back to the word, focused and determined, because it's rarely you could have a product, especially if you're building a brand, I mean, you know, and no one knows about it, that a guy is going to, Santa Claus is going to come out of the blues and said, I want a container.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If a guy eventually buys a container because he was buying, he started by buying a dozen, 2 dozen, 3 dozen, a case, a pallet, and he's moved up that way there. So even when he's made his major order, it hasn't, it's just because you've convinced it to continue buying higher and higher amounts.
Mark, I can't talk about you being a successful businessman without mentioning some of your awards. Can you tell us about some of these awards you've received and how they resonated with you? I
think the first award, I think, I mean, we've won many awards over the year. I think it's at least about 7 or 8 over the last, or probably even 10 over the last 18 years. The first one, I think I was absolutely, you know, over the moon about that one year. You know, I wasn't aware of awards in the first case. I just happened to be invited to this ceremony, and I was told I was on the list of potential nominees. Went down there with my suited and booted, you know what I mean, thinking, well, I mean, they give me complimentary ticket. And I thought I was just going to enjoy myself, have a free drink. And then heard my name getting called, you know. I think I was definitely appreciative of that one there. I think it was some sort of like Black Entrepreneur of the Year award or something like that many years ago, you know. That was a very special award. I mean, because it was the first one. I think one of my, I mean, in terms of just highlighting a couple, I mean, one of the ones I thought I was very pleased about also is one called Global Entrepreneur, which was where I competed against other, not just, I mean, that first one was probably, I would say, was in the black sector, but this one with the Global Entrepreneur was to do with all sectors across the Thames area in London, where you had white companies, Indian companies, every and any one. And we actually won the Global Entrepreneur of the Year, because what had happened at that time is when the I think is what you call UKTI, UK Trade and Investment, had realized that we had managed to sell the Chinese market tea. Yeah,
That's ironic.
And they couldn't. It kind of was mind-blogging to think that an English company or a company based in the UK. Normally, people say you buy tea from China.
Right.
And there's this little company here in South London that managed to convince the Chinese to buy tea from them and ship it back over there. So that one day was kind of like special, because I mean we were competing against higher and bigger, massive companies that are turning over tens of millions, and we would actually won that category based on the tenacity or the uniqueness of what we'd actually managed to achieve.
What is the least helpful advice anyone has ever given you, Mark, in terms of business?
Don't get into business.
And how did that motivate you?
I don't really. I mean, I don't really listen to people to tell the truth. You know what I mean?
That is
normally
obvious.
What I want to do, I just get along and do it. I mean, you always have people that will tell you negative things anyhow. I mean, it cannot be done. You know, I normally, if I have people like that around me, I tend to avoid them anyhow.
Okay.
I tend to try and associate myself with more positive thinking people. So that even if, for instance, you are into a challenge that you might feel that seems impossible, instead of thinking and saying it cannot be done, you look at what needs to be done to make it happen. You know? So I tend to just try and associate myself with people who will be thinking like that and have conversations with people who will be thinking like that, compared to somebody who is, no, it can't be done. Oh, it's never going to be done. Oh, you're wrong. You're going to be failing.
For young people who are listening, or people thinking about getting into business, I wanna ask you this. You're quite confident and positive and so on. Were you always this way from the beginning to now? And answer this one, and I have another question to
Well,
ask.
I mean, the thing about it, I might sound positive, but many times when you're embarking on things, you tend to be afraid.
I'm glad you mentioned fear. I'm glad you mentioned fear, Mark.
Yeah. You're always afraid, you know. But sometimes the fears will drive you to end up trying to make sure it succeeds, because you realize sometimes you jump into the stream and you're heading in the wrong direction. And you think, for Christ's sake, I'm probably doing something wrong. But then, you know, back to your focus and your drive, you just keep going because you believe that this thing is achievable.
Yeah. What were some of your earlier fears, though?
Being unsuccessful. That's the biggest fear. You know, I mean, I can remember the early days when I even started. I mean, I used to be, you know, as we built up the tea business, I used to be doing a part-time job working as a taxi driver in the nights in London, and I was selling tea during the day. And I used to get worried that I might end up just being a taxi driver only if this tea doesn't work.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
What kept you going, though?
Actually, it's a funny scenario, actually. I probably might as well talk the story. I started what you call doing pirating. I stopped working with the cab offices, and I used to drive around and pick up people, which was pretty much illegal, just like that, like the black cab driver. And I got caught one night. Normally, you had to put points on your license. And I had to go to court because I was considered that I was applying for hire without no proper license. And I just said to the judge, I mean, I didn't have any money. I wanted to make some extra money, and I was very sorry that I was pirating, and I promised I wouldn't do it again. And I don't know, I mean, for some reason, I mean, it was a gimmick really and truly just not to get the highest fine. But when I decided to try and do it again, I thought to myself, well, I did promise the guy I wasn't going to do it again. So,
Yes.
so I should spend, instead of rushing home at 5, 6 o'clock in the afternoon to have a sleep to go in the night and do taxiing, I stayed out until 8 o'clock in the night to make sure that the money I wasn't making taxiing, I was making by selling tea. And funny enough, that is what even propelled the business to the next level. Because I think the taxing was like a safe zone. I knew I could have made 500 pounds or 600 pounds in those days doing taxiing. Yep. So, and I didn't feel that I was going to make enough money selling the teas only. But once I actually end up getting to that position, and in the back of my mind, I actually said to the judge, I promised I wouldn't pirate any longer. And I just felt that I had promised the guy I wasn't going to do it. So I started spending more hours in the roads. I literally sell teas until the shops were closed. So if a shop is closed at 10 o'clock at night, if I'm driving and I see a shop open at 10 o'clock at night, I went in there to try and sell him.
Crisis is a dangerous opportunity, right, Mark?
Exactly.
Can you tell us what challenges or what challenge you overcame that you're most proud of?
I think the biggest challenge I've ever had in my life in business is within the last 5 years. The thing about it, when you grow your business and the larger the business gets, sometimes you take on risks that are higher. And if you take on a risk that is higher, if it's failed, you could fall further down and you end up losing a lot more. Uh-huh. The risk involved in the smaller days is, you overcome it, or it's not as big as the ones you may take when you get bigger. And one of the biggest projects I ever took on is when I was busy trying to, just before the recession, I realized it was coming and I thought I had to get my cost of manufacturing done. And I ended up in one of the biggest projects by setting up a 10,000 square foot factory in Jamaica. Setting up the factory in Jamaica was all great. I can't help commending Jamaicans in the efficiency and how they facilitated the inward investment that I embarked on, Mm-hmm. But in my complacency, what I'd actually done is employ the first 10 Jamaicans that rapped on the door. And 8 of them worked at the pretty much rotten apples and broke up almost all the machinery in about 2 years period. Wow. We began to get a lot of substandard product arriving back in the UK, and I ended up with 2 factories, the cheap one making bad quality teas that the expensive factory had to do over. And I ended up with 2 factories, and my cost went up than go down. Yeah? So I found myself sinking at a tremendous rate until I decided, boy, this one is not going to work. It doesn't matter how much perseverance, and I ended up closing the factory down in Jamaica. And lost a tremendous amount, put me, in a dire situation, But then, saying that, one of the things that when a failure occurs, it's always easy to say that, this guy did it and the guy should have done that. But, you have to also look at what you have done and how you might have been able to correct it. So instead of blaming everybody else, why not look and see what you could blame yourself about, And what I basically realized is that my easygoing, not employing people here and scare them behavior is what really caused the problem. Because if I had done more due diligence in employing the people in Jamaica and not behaved in the same way I've always employed people in the UK, then the project would have probably been successful. So one of the things I actually done even when I went back to the UK, just go on a course of how to employ people, because I realized I didn't know how to employ people in the first case.
What would you say distinguishes the Dalgety teas from other brands?
Our teas are always richer and stronger, and you only do 100% natural herbal teas. And one of the things when you Google Dalgety teas, you'll find is that people will literally say, "Oh, I like Dalgety teas because I could make 2 or 3 cups of tea for 1 tea bag."
I like that. But
that's the kind of stuff you hear about us,
Mark, you have any copies and any samples you can show us live?
Yeah, next to me, you got things like, what's this one here? Instant ginger, if anyone could see.
Instant ginger, yes.
No, this is lemon and ginger, sorry. Lemon and ginger. We got the one that we started with the Cerasistro Corolla. Mm-hmm. We now, one of our latest Dalgety lines was the pure green tea.
Ah.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's about 13 or 14 lines. I don't think it's a good idea to show all of them. Saying that, we've also created, talking about challenges, one of the things we found ourselves being challenged about is that as we begin to try to move across from the more hardcore ethnic markets to the mainstream market in the UK and across Europe, we were getting some amount of hindrance to do with the fact that it was considered a Caribbean product. Yep. Which in one way is good for the ethnic markets, but find the purist market, they were thinking, well, okay, what do they know about teas? So for many years we've been trying to sometimes think about redesigning our packaging to appeal to both markets. And then I certainly realized that it's very difficult to, I mean, it's either somebody likes it or they don't like it.
Yeah.
And sometimes what you have to do is look and see what market like and design something around what they like. So one of the things we actually did, which was last year, we just, to penetrate the more mainstream white consumer market in Europe, we just created a totally different packaging tea, different brand, but it's pretty much almost just similar, not far off, similar from the same blends we did. So we end up creating a brand that we call Demerara, which I show you here now. Yeah, which is there's a Demerara honey and ginger, Demerara lemon and ginger. But as you see, this packaging is more European looking. Yeah, it's more sober. Sometimes you find white people might say that the packaging from Dalgety is so colorful, they think it's almost, they need a shades for it. But then people from the ethnic markets, they see colors as vibrancy, whereby white consumers, they like more sober looking stuff. I mean, we obviously named it Demerara because, I mean, that's back to heritage, and we thought it was one of the strongest names that came out of Guyana. And we also wanted to honor a lot of our farmers that we've got across Guyana that we felt didn't have any, I mean, they're the guys that work in the background that supplies with a lot of these things. So we thought we'd give that this new name, that name.
What intrigues you about your business, Mark?
What intrigues me? That's an interesting question. I'm always passionate about what I make, and I think what intrigues me is just making things.
Yes.
It's just taking things from, you know, you walking around, for instance, I mean, a good example is like noni juice, you know, I mean, you know, it just, you know, I was doing an exhibition in Guyana years ago, and, you know, there's a guy sitting next to me with this juice in very bad packaging and so forth, and he had some of the fruits. He's calling it something else anyhow. And then he said to me, oh, you know, in the overseas markets, they call this thing noni. I'm like, noni? I said, this is a serious commodity.
Yeah.
When I went into the area, there was guys playing cricket with the noni fruit, not realizing that noni is selling for like 30 pounds a 1 liter bottle. You know what I'm saying? No, that is the kind of stuff that excites me. They're like, hey, we need to set this up. So we ended up setting up a whole, you know, little bottling facility around that guy. Yeah. I mean, and had him just start juicing noni just for us.
Mark,
yeah? That's the kind of stuff that intrigues me about my business, you know. Looking at opportunities, changing even small farmers' lives. I mean, like, you know, one of the things that actually even makes me smile sometimes is that, you know, out in the country in Guyana where we have all these farmers, I mean, some of them, well, a lot of them sometimes they don't even continue because they start making money, and then, you know, you might meet a guy living in a 2x4 house. He starts supplying us. Next thing you know, he's built his house a little larger. He bought himself a motorcycle. He's gotten himself a car. Then he decided he wants to be a taxi driver. But seeing those differences over the years, I think, motivates you and intrigues you in what we do.
If there were any regrets, what would it be? In the business?
I started business when I was even younger. I mean, it's never a right or whatever.
Right. What is the conversation like, Mark, at the family gatherings about your business?
Say again?
What is the conversation like at family gatherings about your business? The success of it?
I don't know if you at family gatherings, we don't really talk about the success of the business because, I mean, the thing about business is that, I mean, I don't know, maybe probably in my 60s or 70s, I'll look back and start thinking about it because, you know, you're always driving for another level.
Right.
So what happens is that, I mean, because you're always driving for another level, the success that you might have had, you don't really realize it's a success because by that time you're actually trying to move to another level.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So the conversation is never really about what if you're successful. It's always about I need to do this and how am I going to get it done. Yeah.
You know,
So that's what the conversation becomes. You never look at anything. You know what I mean? Okay, this has been done. Okay, that's it. What's the other thing we were supposed to get done? Okay, let's see. Let's get along with it.
and if you had to do it again, would you choose teas?
Um, I don't know. I mean, I think I fumbled into teas and saw an opportunity.
Right, right, right.
Um, I mean, because I never, when I started the business, is really just seeing an opportunity, and like many products that we develop, is always about seeing an opportunity. You know, what I mean, I don't know if for instance, if the guy had called and said to me he wanted mangoes, I probably might be making mango juices in boxes like Rubicon and all that right now. So you know what I mean. Whatever it is, you know what I mean. We would have taken it to another level, depending on what the opportunity and what opportunities you sees in whatever commodity you're looking at. You know.
What are you most proud of, Mark?
Um, I mean, I'm most proud of just having my family and enjoying my kids and so forth. You know, I mean, that's some things when you get up and you work hard and you see them growing. I think that's something that you feel good about.
Is
You
is
know,
that is can I ask if that aspect of it is what feeds your spirit?
it does. I think it does. I mean, it's not the only aspect, but it definitely contributes towards it.
Uh-huh. And what do you do on your days off? I know that's a ridiculous question, Mark, having just listened to you for almost an
On a
hour.
proper days off, I mean, I spend time with my family, my kids. I mean, take them out and we try and do something family oriented and take my mind off. My wife try her best to take my mind off of work.
Patrick said, "Great marketing strategy. Mark, you're truly an inspiration." What is next for Mark Dalgety, and what is next for Dalgety Teas?
Well, the next for Dalgety is trying to get my production facility working in Guyana,
Are you
and
hopeful?
hopefully, ultimately, me living in Guyana and visiting overseas, and not living overseas and visiting Guyana. I reckon that's what is next.
If you could go back in time, what would you tell 15-year-old Mark?
I don't think there's anything I could tell 15-year-old Mark. I mean, Mark is Mark.
Hmm.
I mean, everything I've done with a passion and I've enjoyed it. From all my disgusting days at school, you look back at it and you think, well, I had a great time.
I like that. I
You know what I
really
mean to
do.
say? I have
I
really,
like
really
that.
great things, you know what I mean?
What profession other than yours would you like to attempt?
I think I would like I mean, if I had the time, I mean, is to spend some more time studying business management, MBA or something like that,
Uh huh. Uh huh.
Because I come from an engineering background, and then I became a natural sales and marketing person. I think it would be nice to actually, look at a vocational study in terms of business management or something like that, and just see how it compares to me, who do it in a more natural, common sense manner.
Got you. Garfield Buddy said, "Good show, an insight into the world of Dalgety teas and the man Mark behind it." Laters. Alison Butters Grant said, "Mark is a trooper." Mark, finish this sentence for us. I look forward to Sunday evenings too.
Hello?
Did you hear me? I said,
No, 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 say that again.
finish this sentence. I look forward to Sunday evenings too.
Go to the cinema.
Oh, it's funny how many of us still love going to the cinema.
Yep.
Have we seen the best of Mark and have we seen the best of Dalgety teas?
No, you haven't.
I have one more question for you, but I really want to ask you about this. You mentioned, and I didn't even realize this, that your company produces more than teas, noni juice, and other products. Can you, as quickly as possible, give us like maybe 4 or 5 other things or 3 or 4 other things that you produce?
Oh, as I said, I mean, there's the noni juice, there's the bitters. We do an extra hot pepper sauce.
Extra, extra hot?
Yep, pepper sauce.
Wow. And all this is on the website. I posted
Yeah, it's
the
all on the website, www.dalgetyherbalteas.com, which is www.dalgetyherbalteas.com, or you could see it on also dalgety.net, Dalgety. Some
Mhm.
people like to spell my name with two T's. It's actually Dalgety.
And about shipping. Does it get complicated if you're in the US and want?
No, 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 not at all. I mean, we actually do mail orders all over the world, even to Russia and all kinds of places. We have mail orders going out to, Yugoslavia. I mean, all the unusual places, Memphis, Tennessee's, and all. We have mail orders going everywhere.
Wow, okay. And the last question for the evening, I ask all my guests, what makes you laugh out loud?
What makes me laugh or not?
Yes, yes, Mark, you.
What makes me laugh out loud? Uh, I don't know. I mean, there's various things could make you laugh. I think the thing that makes you could really tickle you sometimes is if one of your kids do something really extremely funny. Then you really think, well, wait, this is actually funny. Yeah, obviously you end up having good laughs with your friends when you sit back and you speak about old times at school and growing up in Guyana. I mean, and funny things about yourself or funny things about friends or funny things about people that you knew. That really cracks you up. I mean, it's all about old stories, As they say sometimes, even in Guyana, we say tantalizing,
Oh, yes.
sitting down, chatting old stories. That normally has you cracking up many a times. Sometimes you could talk the story every year, once a year, and you still find it extremely funny.
Patrick said you were always a salesman, bro. Mark, thank you, my brother.
Thank you, and thank you for having on the show. Keep up the good work on the show. I mean, I'll have to try and make sure I tune into it a bit more often.
Thank you.
And definitely best of luck to you and your little entrepreneurial activities that you're doing with what you're doing here, because it's all still entrepreneurial anyhow.
Thank you, my brother. Thank you very much.
Yes.
And
Thank
good
you. Thank you.
and good night. And try and get some rest and watch those mosquitoes in Guyana.
Well, you come with the terrain, you know what I mean to say. So we'll have to develop a proper mosquito repellent down here.
We have to, man.
There's always an opportunity.
We have to. I have met some cruel mosquitoes, some real bad-minded ones that bite you between your toes where it's sensitive to scratch, and in the middle of your back where it's difficult to reach. I mean, come on.
I'll work on developing a good repellent for you.
Good, buddy. Good. And take care, man.
All right, then. Take care. Yeah,
All
all
right,
the
good
best,
night.
man.
Good
Cheers.
night.
Yeah, bye.